Welcome to Greek for a Week. I'm glad that you are watching another video. We are continuing our study in the book of 1 Peter. We're looking at chapter 4, verses 1 through 6 is the paragraph that we are looking at. Specifically this week, verses 3 and 4 will be discussed. You'll notice that verse 3 is here and verse 4 is here. Let me begin. I'm going to go ahead and translate. And then we'll look at a few things that I think will be helpful in understanding these two verses. So Peter begins, "For the time already past is sufficient to have carried out the desire of the Gentiles, because you have already pursued a course in sensuality, lust, drunkenness, carousing, drinking parties, and abominable idolatries, in which they are surprised that you do not run with them in the same excesses of reckless deeds, so they blaspheme you." So as we look at this particular text, I would always like to at least show some kind of a relationship as we look at these verses that are separated each week. Because again, we want to look at the whole paragraph, but that's a little bit difficult to do each week. So this conjunction here, is the motivational grounds for what was stated in verse 2. It's explaining why they should live the rest of their lives according to God's will and not their own human will, if you want to put it that way. So that's the connector between verses 2 and 3. Then you have an attributive participle here. This attributive participle is a perfect active participle, masculine nominative singular of par rekamai. And this attributive participle, again, it's attributing a participle to the fact that the time is already passed. And so he's trying to explain that this timing here has already gone by in that sense. And it's interesting because as we work our way through the text, we have another perfect tense form, verbal form, and it's this infinitive here. And this infinitive is a perfect middle infinitive. I'm suggesting that it's an exegetical infinitive, and it's clarifying the archetos is sufficient. Right, so it's clarifying that term there. And then you also have another perfect form. You have the perfect middle participle, masculine accusative plural of paruamai, likely causal. So what we have here is he's saying that the reason why that time, for the time already passed, is sufficient to have carried out the desire or the lust of the Gentiles, because you have pursued a course in, and then he lists all of the different things that you've done. This N here is probably with reference to, so that makes each of these datives here likely reference as well, with reference to all of these things, the following datives here. So this, back on this participle, I didn't finish here. This participle, again, likely causal. The referent or the agent of this participle is an implied you, the accusative subject of the infinitive. So to you to have carried out, if you will, the desire of the Gentiles, because you with reference to, and then he lists all of these things. Now in verse 4, you have an en ho, or you could say in which, that would be reference. Then you have here a genitive absolute. You have a participle in the genitive case, as well as a noun or pronoun in the genitive case. So that is a present active participle, masculine genitive plural. And then your last one here, the word for blasphemy, is a present active participle, masculine nominative plural. Again, I've translated this a lot like Martin Dubus, who did the Baylor exegetical handbook for First Peter. And his name is Mark Dubus, not Martin. And he takes this participle here as a participle of result. So he says that in which they are surprised that you do not run with them in the same excesses of reckless deeds, and so, or therefore, they are the ones who blaspheme you. So again, that might be helpful as we look at verses 3 and 4. Again, we're going to pull all of this together when we diagram verses 1 through 6. So next week, let's look at verses 5 and 6. And then the following week, we'll go ahead and diagram it and see how Peter puts everything together. Have a great week. We'll see you next week.